I didn't see the shove coming. 1 second I was lowering myself into my usual spot at the Christmas table, balancing a plate loaded with glazed ham and cranberry sauce. The next, a hand slammed into my shoulder blade, hard enough to knock the wind out of me. My ankle twisted on the Persian rug beneath me, and I went down. Hard. China rattled. Conversation died. My stepdad's voice cut through the silence like a blade. This seat belongs to my real daughter. Leave. I looked up at him from the hardwood floor, my vision blurring at the edges. Around the table, 20 faces stared, aunts, uncles, cousins, his business partners. My mother's fork hung suspended midair. My stepsister Autumn sat in the chair beside mine, lips curled in a smile she tried to hide behind her wine glass. Nobody moved. Not one person stood up to help me. Not one hand reached down. The grandfather clock in the hallway ticked. Someone cleared their throat. Forks scraped against plates as people returned to eating, pretending nothing had happened. Pretending they hadn't just watched a 50-year-old man shove his stepdaughter to the floor on Christmas Eve. I pushed myself up slowly, joints aching, dress wrinkled. My hands were shaking, but I kept them steady. I smoothed the fabric over my knees, swallowed the humiliation burning in my throat, and looked him dead in the eye. "All right," I said quietly. "Enjoy your dinner." I walked out of that dining room with my spine straight and my head high. What he didn't know, what none of them knew, was that in a few hours, after the pumpkin pie was gone and everyone had shuffled off to bed with their bellies full, I would set something in motion that would detonate his entire world. And when he woke up the next morning, he'd have 45 missed calls on his phone. Let me tell you something about that moment. To everyone at that table, it probably looked sudden. Explosive. Like I'd finally pushed him too far or said the wrong thing. It wasn't sudden. It was the final hairline fracture in a foundation that had been crumbling since I was 14 years old. My mom married him 2 years after my dad died of a heart attack. Back then, his name was Lawrence Brennan, and he seemed like a good man. Steady job running a landscaping company. Firm handshake. Big laugh. The kind of guy who barbecued on weekends and told dad jokes that made my mom giggle. But there were cracks in the mask from the beginning. Small things. He never called me Jessica. Just her or the kid. When we took family photos at Autumn's graduation, he asked me to step aside so it could be just family. Every birthday, Autumn got jewelry and spa days. I got a grocery store card. When we went out to restaurants, he introduced us as my wife, and this is, well, you know. I learned to make myself invisible. If I sat somewhere and he wanted that spot, he'd stand behind my chair until I moved. No words. Just this heavy, oppressive presence that made the air feel thick. So when he shoved me that night at Christmas, it wasn't new behavior. It was just the first time he'd done it in front of everyone. The first time he didn't bother hiding. My mother's first words after I hit the floor weren't "Are you okay?" They were, "Jessica, sweetheart, please don't make a scene." As if I'd thrown myself down for attention. As if being shoved in front of 20 relatives was something I'd orchestrated for drama. The Christmas music kept playing, Bing Crosby crooning about white Christmases and sleigh bells. Forks kept moving. Ice clinked in glasses. Somebody laughed at a joke I couldn't hear over the ringing in my ears. But something inside me snapped into perfect, crystalline focus. For 8 years, I had swallowed insults, absorbed coldness, accepted being erased from my own family. I'd bitten my tongue through countless dinners where Lawrence bragged about his house and his success, while my mother worked herself to exhaustion paying every single bill. I'd stayed quiet when he took credit for the garden I'd planted. When he lied about renovating the basement I'd renovated. When he told his poker buddies he was putting me through college, even though I'd worked 3 jobs and taken out loans he knew nothing about. I'd stayed quiet because my mother asked me to. Because keeping the peace mattered more than my dignity. Because I loved her and didn't want to make her choose. But standing in that dining room, brushing carpet fibers off my black dress, I realized something. My silence hadn't kept the peace. It had just made me smaller and smaller until I was practically invisible. No more. I walked upstairs to my childhood bedroom, the one with the faded butterfly wallpaper my dad had helped me put up when I was 9. I closed the door, locked it, sat down at the small desk wedged beneath the window and opened my laptop. For the past 14 months, I'd been quietly tracking something. receipts, bank transfers, property tax statements, mortgage payment confirmations, utility bills, insurance documents, all in my mother's name. Every single one. Lawrence Brennan didn't pay the bills. Hell, he didn't even know the login passwords to the accounts. My mother thought she was the one managing household finances, but really, I was. I'd been doing it since I turned 18, and she'd asked me to help her organize paperwork. What started as helping her file documents turned into me discovering the truth. My mother paid the mortgage, $2,400 a month. She paid the property taxes, $8,000 a year. She paid the homeowner's insurance, the utilities, the car payments, the credit card bills. Lawrence contributed exactly $400 a month. That was it. His landscaping business? It barely broke even. Most days he sat in his recliner watching ESPN and drinking Coors Light, while my mother worked double shifts at the medical billing company and weekend hours at the public library. Yet at every barbecue, every holiday party, every family gathering, he held court like a king. I built this deck with my own 2 hands, he'd say, gesturing at the deck my mother had hired contractors to build. I take care of this family, he'd announce, cracking open another beer. People clapped him on the back, called him a good provider, a real man. Meanwhile, I watched my mother fall asleep at the kitchen table, too exhausted to make it upstairs to bed. And I said nothing. Until tonight. I packed a single duffel bag, 4 pairs of jeans, 3 sweaters, underwear and socks, my toiletries, my laptop and charger, my passport, and 1 thick manila folder I'd been building for over a year. Inside that folder, copies of every mortgage statement going back 8 years, property tax records showing my mother as sole owner, utility bills in her name only, bank statements showing her payments, credit card statements showing his purchases, mostly sports bars and fishing gear, screenshots of text messages where he told her not to worry about the boring money stuff, an email where he'd assured her he'd handle everything, and she should just focus on work. Receipts showing he'd used her credit card to buy Autumn a $3,000 engagement ring last spring. I'd documented everything. Not because I was planning revenge. At first, I just wanted to understand how bad it really was. But as the folder grew thicker, so did my resolve. I left a note on my pillow, written on the back of a Christmas card. I'm safe. Don't look for me. Not yet. Jessica. Then I zipped up the bag, threw on my winter coat, and walked downstairs. The house was quiet now. Lawrence was snoring in front of the TV, football highlights playing on mute. My mother was cleaning up the kitchen, her movements slow and tired. Autumn had driven back to her apartment in the city. I could hear the dishwasher running. I walked past the living room, past Lawrence's sprawled form and his half-empty beer can balanced on his gut, and slipped out the front door. The December air bit at my face. Christmas lights twinkled on every house on Maple Street, wreaths and inflatable Santas and glowing reindeer. Everything looked normal. Festive. The kind of neighborhood where bad things weren't supposed to happen. I got in my Honda Civic, the one I'd bought myself after saving for 2 years, and drove. I didn't look back at the house. Not once. 25 miles away, I pulled into a 24-hour diner just off Highway 9. The kind of place with cracked red vinyl booths and a waitress who'd clearly worked there since the Reagan administration. I ordered black coffee I didn't drink and sat in the corner booth beneath a flickering neon sign that said eat. Then I made the call I'd been preparing to make for 3 months. Not to a friend. Not to a family member. To Reginald Porter, attorney at law. I'd found his office online after searching Family Law Property Rights Pennsylvania. His reviews were solid. His consultation fee was reasonable. When I'd called him back in September, he'd listened to my situation and said 6 words that changed everything. Document everything. Then call me back. So I had. Now, at 11:47 p.m. on Christmas Eve, I sat in that diner booth and dialed his cell number, the one he'd given me specifically for this moment. He answered on the second ring. Ms. Crawford, he said. His voice was gravelly but alert. You ready? I looked down at the manila folder on the table. Yes, I said. I'm ready. Meet me at my office in 30 minutes. The line went dead. I left a 20 on the table and drove into the night. Reginald Porter's office was in a converted Victorian house on the outskirts of town, the kind of building that looked haunted but really just needed new paint. A single light glowed in the second-floor window. I climbed the creaking steps and found the door unlocked. Inside, the place smelled like old books and lemon furniture polish. Porter sat behind a massive oak desk, covered in legal pads and coffee-stained mugs. He was maybe 60, with wire-rimmed glasses and a mustache that belonged in a Western film. "Sit," he said, gesturing to a leather chair across from him. I Saturday placed the folder on his desk. He opened it slowly, methodically, like a surgeon examining X-rays. His eyebrows climbed higher with each page he turned. "Your stepfather has zero legal claim to this property," he said after 10 minutes of silence. "I know. Your mother owns it outright. Her name is on the deed. She's made every payment for 8 years." "I know." He looked up at me over his glasses. "Does she know?" "She thinks they own it together. He told her marriage means what's mine is yours." She believed him. Porter's jaw tightened. Community property doesn't work that way in Pennsylvania. Assets acquired before marriage remain separate unless explicitly transferred. This house was your mother's before she married him. He never contributed to the down payment. His name was never added to the deed. So legally, he's a tenant. Not even that, really. He's a guest. Your mother can ask him to leave anytime she wants. I felt something unclench in my chest. "Can we make her see that?" Porter leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled. "I can send a formal letter outlining the legal facts. I can copy the mortgage company, the insurance provider, and the county property office. I can make it very clear who actually owns what." "Will that be enough?" He smiled, thin and sharp. When people realize they've been lied to, especially about money, it tends to have an effect. We worked until 3 in the morning. He drafted a letter on official law firm letterhead. Formal but devastating. Each paragraph a precision strike. This letter serves to inform all relevant parties that the property located at 42 Maple Street, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, is owned solely by Mrs. Carolyn Crawford. Mr. Lawrence Brennan has no legal ownership stake, no financial claim, and no authority over said property. It went on. Page after page of documented proof. Original deed from 2007, purchased by Carolyn Crawford before her second marriage. 8 years of mortgage payments, all from her account. Property tax payments, all in her name. Insurance policies listing her as sole owner. Zero financial contribution from Lawrence Brennan toward any housing expense. Porter attached scanned documents. Bank statements. Payment histories. Everything. Then he added one more paragraph that made my heart pound. Mrs. Crawford has the legal right to request Mr. Brennan's immediate removal from the property. As he has no tenancy agreement and no ownership claim, he would be required to vacate within 72 hours of such a request. "When do we send it?" I asked. Porter glanced at the clock. 3:17 a.m. "In 2 hours," he said. "Right at dawn. When people are just waking up. Maximum impact." "He's going to lose his mind." "Yes," Porter said calmly. "He is." At 5:30 a.m. on Christmas morning, while most of Harrisburg slept off their holiday meals, Reginald Porter pressed send. The email went to my mother's personal email and work email, the mortgage company, the homeowner's insurance company, the county property office, Lawrence's sister, Patricia, my mother's sister, Aunt Wendy, and for good measure, the family group chat. Every single person received the same message. This letter concerns the property ownership of 42 Maple Street. Attached are legal documents confirming sole ownership by Mrs. Carolyn Crawford. Mr. Lawrence Brennan has no financial or legal claim to this property. I sat in a budget in 6 miles away, watching my phone light up like a Christmas tree. 5:47 a.m., Aunt Wendy calling. 6:02 a.m., my mother calling. 6:15 a.m., my mother calling again. 6:18 a.m., my mother texting, "Jessica, where are you?" 6:23 a.m., unknown number, probably Patricia. 6:31 a.m., my mother calling for the fourth time. I didn't answer any of them. Instead, I ordered room service breakfast, scrambled eggs and toast I could barely taste, and waited. At 7:04 a.m., my phone rang again. This time, I answered. Jessica. My mother's voice was barely a whisper. Where are you? Are you safe? I'm in a hotel. I'm fine. What? She took a shaky breath. What is this email? The truth, Mom. Silence. Then, I don't understand. Lawrence said, he told me we owned the house together, that when we got married, it became ours. He lied. But the mortgage payments. You've made every single one. I have the statements. Another silence, longer this time. I could hear her breathing, fast and shallow. I need to see you, she said. Not yet. Jessica, please. Mom, look at the documents. Really look at them. Look at 8 years of payments you made alone. Look at the tax records. Look at the deed with only your name on it. But why would he? Because it benefited him. Because you were too tired to question it. Because he's been using you. I heard something break in her voice. Not crying. Worse. The sound of someone's entire reality cracking apart. I have to go, she whispered. The line went dead. At 7:38 a.m., Lawrence Brennan woke up in the master bedroom of a house he believed was his. He reached for his phone out of habit, probably planning to scroll through football scores and check his fantasy league. Instead, he found 45 missed calls. From my mother, 18 calls. His sister Patricia, 9 calls. Aunt Wendy, 7 calls. The mortgage company, 4 calls. The insurance company, 3 calls. 3 neighbors. A county clerk. And 2 unknown numbers. His voicemail was full. His text messages were flooded. And sitting at the kitchen table in her bathrobe, my mother held a stack of papers in her shaking hands. Every document Porter had sent. Every receipt. Every statement. Every lie, exposed in black and white. She looked up when Lawrence walked into the kitchen. Her face was completely blank. Sit down, she said quietly. What the hell is going on? He demanded. Why is everyone calling me? Sit down. Something in her voice made him obey. She slid the papers across the table. Explain, she said. And for the first time in 8 years, Lawrence Brennan had no words. Lawrence stared at the papers like they were written in a foreign language. I wasn't there to see it, but my mother told me later, every detail, and I've replayed it in my mind 1,000 times. His face went from confusion to recognition to panic in the space of 5 seconds. Where did you get these? He asked. Does it matter? Carolyn, this is, somebody's messing with you. This is fake. Is your name on the deed to this house? Well, no, but. Have you paid the mortgage in the last 8 years? I contribute. I pay for. $400 a month, my mother interrupted. Her voice was eerily calm. You give me $400 a month. The mortgage is $2,400. The property tax is $8,000 a year. The insurance is $3,000. The utilities are another $500 a month. I run a business. A business that made $11,000 last year. I saw the tax return. His mouth opened. Closed. Opened again. You've been going through my stuff. This house isn't our house, is it? My mother continued. It's my house. I bought it before I married you. I've paid for it ever since. You've lived here for free. That's not. We are married. What's yours is mine. Not in Pennsylvania, she said quietly. I called the attorney who sent that email. He explained the law. Property owned before marriage stays separate unless ownership is explicitly transferred. You have no legal claim to this house. Lawrence's face turned red. This is Jessica's doing. That ungrateful little. Don't. My mother's voice went hard. Don't you dare. She's trying to turn you against me. She didn't have to. My mother stood up, still holding the papers. You did that yourself. Last night, when you shoved her to the floor at Christmas dinner. In front of everyone. She was in Autumn's seat. There are 8 empty chairs at that table. You shoved her because you wanted to humiliate her. You wanted everyone to see that she doesn't matter. That she's not really family. That's not. I watched you do it, my mother said, her voice breaking. I watched you push my daughter to the ground, and I did nothing. I told her not to make a scene. I chose you over her. Tears were running down her face now, but her expression stayed hard. I've been choosing you over her for 8 years. Every time you excluded her from photos. Every time you forgot her birthday. Every time you called her the kid instead of her name. I told myself you needed time. That blending families was hard. That she was being too sensitive. Carolyn. Get out. The words fell like stones. Lawrence blinked. What? Get out of my house. This is my home. No. My mother's voice didn't waver. It's my home. You're a guest who's overstayed his welcome. You can't just kick me out. We are married. The attorney said I can. You have no tenancy agreement. No ownership stake. I'm asking you to leave. Where am I supposed to go? That, my mother said, is no longer my problem. She walked to the front door and opened it. Cold December air rushed in. Pack your things. You have until tonight. Lawrence Brennan left that house at 4 p.m. on Christmas Day, driving away in his pickup truck with everything he owned crammed in the bed and back seat. He called 47 times over the next 3 days. My mother blocked his number. He showed up twice. She called the police both times. They informed him he was trespassing and would be arrested if he returned. He tried to get Autumn to intervene. She called my mother once, crying, begging her to reconsider. My mother said 5 words. He shoved Jessica to the ground. Autumn hung up. He tried to get his friends to talk sense into her. They stopped calling after she sent them copies of the financial records. 3 weeks later, my mother filed for divorce. I came home on New Year's Eve. I'd been staying at the Budget Inn, then with a friend from college, giving my mother space to process everything. We talked on the phone every few days. Short, careful conversations where we both cried more than we spoke. But when I pulled into the driveway on December 31st, she was waiting on the porch. She looked smaller somehow. Older. But also lighter, like she'd been carrying something heavy for years and had finally set it down. We didn't hug right away. We stood there in the cold, breath fogging between us. I'm sorry, she said finally. Mom. No. Let me say this. Her voice cracked. I'm sorry I didn't protect you. I'm sorry I asked you to be small and quiet and invisible, so I could keep the peace with a man who didn't deserve it. I'm sorry I made you feel like you didn't belong in your own home. Tears were streaming down her face. I'm sorry I chose him over you. I'm sorry it took you sending legal documents for me to see what was right in front of me. I'm sorry for every time he hurt you and I looked away. I couldn't speak. My throat was too tight. You shouldn't have had to do what you did, she continued. You shouldn't have had to collect evidence and hire an attorney and blow up your family on Christmas just to be seen. That's on me. All of it. Mom. I know it's not okay, she whispered. I know saying sorry doesn't fix 8 years. But I'm going to spend the rest of my life making it up to you. I promise. We stood there crying in the cold until we couldn't feel our fingers. Then we went inside. The house felt different without Lawrence in it. Bigger. Quieter. Like it was finally breathing properly. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where I'd been shoved to the floor 10 days earlier. Lawrence's chair was empty. My mother had already donated it to Goodwill. I'm selling the house, she said. I blinked. What? Too many bad memories. I want to start fresh. Somewhere that's just ours. She reached across the table and took my hand. What do you think about Maine? She asked. You always loved the ocean. I squeezed her hand. Maine sounds perfect. 6 months later, we moved into a small cottage in Portland with a view of Casco Bay. Lawrence's seat stayed empty, and neither of us looked back.